All right, welcome back to Bayou Time. Very pleased to have State Representative Bryan Fontenot, District 55, here at HTV, and he was involved in a big session, the crime session, and that was got intense at times, didn't it?
It did. Anytime we're dealing with criminal justice issues, it touches a lot of people personally. Either they've been a victim of a crime, they know a suspect of a crime, they've been incarcerated before, or know someone incarcerated. So, I've said this for the last 4 years. I served in the Capitol. One of the most contentious places to serve is on the Administration of Criminal Justice Committee. So it was intense, right? But let me say this. I think we can look back over the last 5 or 6 years and see that some of the things that we've implemented were not working effectively as they should be. As crime continues to rise across Louisiana, Governor Landry made it, part of his campaign that there was something we were going to address, and we did so in a big way.
Well, he did, and he did it fast. And let me ask you, we've had a lot of murders in Louisiana, and I don't have any stats. You probably do, but death row, it's not proportionate.
Well, it's very unique the way in Louisiana, the only punishment in any crime that's determined by the jurors is first degree murder. So in Louisiana, all 12 jurors must convict you of first degree murder, and then all 12 jurors must agree that the sentence should be to death. So in some rough calculations, I look back to around 1991, and since 1991, we had about 21,000 homicides in the state of Louisiana, and we currently only have 56 inmates on death row. So it shows that we're clearly using the death penalty for the most heinous of heinous crimes. And over the years, I can only think of one case in Lafourche Parish where we received the death penalty. And one particular case here that I tried in Terrebonne with Joe in the early 2000s, we didn't get the death penalty. So I think it's very rarely used. You got to trust in the district attorneys that we're only giving the death penalty for the most heinous of heinous crimes in this state.
I can recall my father, who was from Napoleonville, saying that years back, a man accused of rape in Napoleonville, they hung him from the bridge, only to find out later that he wasn't the one that committed the rape. So I guess and I saw where a black minister got up and said, in the black community, sometimes we rush to haste, but then later you find out that they're innocent. I'm sure y'all gave that a lot of thought.
So I think you look back, 20, 30 years ago, clearly the criminal justice systems and the criminology and scientific effects of criminal justice clearly wasn't where it is today. DNA came on the scene not until the late 90s. So the science of solving these crimes is so much greater, and the enhance for a mistake is so much less. But with all that said, those people who are on death row are afforded some of the best criminal defense lawyers that the state and country can find, and they have the appeals process that takes in the periods of sometimes 10 years or greater. So you got to trust in the system and due process that if there's a mistake made and if someone's innocent, the system will work and we will find those people out and they wouldn't face that punishment.
And I think a lot of y'all focus aimed at parole itself to make sure that someone didn't get easy parole and then they go and repeat themselves.
We go back to 2017, in the state of Louisiana, we had 50 plus thousand people incarcerated in the state. And you hear people say that, Louisiana was the highest incarcerated state, not only maybe in America, but in the world. But I want to remind the viewers that we are now 35 years, going into 36 years consecutive. We have the highest homicide rate per capita in the country. So we have a lot of crime. To me, that equates, if the police are doing an efficient job, that we should have a lot of people incarcerated. But we did have a bipartisan effort in 2017 to look at how do we let nonviolent offenders out of jail. Some of those numbers, and I think you hear it from both sides, some of those numbers could be skewed because we had COVID. We didn't have trials. We had at one time the city of Orleans trying 125 cases a year to COVID trying 5 cases. Nevertheless, crime is still high. Juvenile crime is on the rise. So we did look at systems that would prevent people from getting out early on parole. In today's sentencing world, I don't know if the defense attorney, the prosecution, or a judge can tell you what the sentence and how much time you'll serve. It's very convoluted. There was some talk that people said, you would serve 25 or 30% of your sentence. Well, we corrected that. We said going forward on August 1st, if you're convicted of a crime, you will serve 85% of the sentence. That's kind of in line with maybe 8 or 10 other states in America and in the federal statute. So you get sentenced to 10 years going forward, you're going to serve 8.5 years.
Where do we put them all? Hadn't that been a major concern, especially, I know that in Terrebonne, I'm not so sure of Lafourche, but in Terrebonne, just not enough room in the jail. So sometimes you got to let less serious crimes go, or they give you a summons. Will they have enough facility to make it work?
So let's go to summons. So we still left in play the Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 211, that specifically allows officers to write summonses in misdemeanor cases. We have about 50+% of all state inmates, that people that are post their conviction, that still reside in parish facilities here in Terrebonne and Lafourche. We closed down some state facilities. So I think the number today is around 28,000 state inmates. Look, do you see that number going up? Of course. I see that number rising. Do you see crime going down? I would say that, and this is what we said in this session, those people who are going to be serving lengthier criminal sentences won't be victimizing people when they're incarcerated in our facilities. You know, there still has to be a plan. We got to look beyond incarceration. If we're doing what's right for the community, we have to look beyond incarceration. And how do we acclimate those people to society? Martin, you know that my time in law enforcement, you know, I see people that if you do the crime, you must serve the time. That didn't work either. So we have to now find the balance of how do we incarcerate people and then let them back out into society successfully.
All right, let's hold that thought. We'll be right back. Very important discussion. State Representative Bryan Fontenot will be back. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights. All right, welcome back. I'm Martin False with State Representative Bryan Fontenot, District 55 here in the area. And no one better to talk to us about the session that they just had on a crime. And one part of that was the concealed carry that we've heard a lot. Now, God, I've been involved in so many lunch talks about it, and you hear so many different sides. You hear, well, it's about time because now the criminals are going to have to put up with guns on the other side. Then you hear, well, what happens if someone who's never shot a gun pulls one out in the crowd and starts firing? Then somebody across the table will go, well, you can't bring it to that crowd. You know, so there's so many different aspects of it, but it's touched the nerve.
No, it has. And let me say this, Martin, for the last 4 years that I've carried some form of expanding our constitutional freedoms to keep and possess firearms. So when you get to the heart of the argument, you have to start where that argument is based at, and it starts in the Constitution. And the Second Amendment to our Constitution says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So where does that leave us? Why did we put these restrictions on people? Why did you say you had to have a background check or you had to pay money to be able to possess a firearm? So in the state of Louisiana, you can currently today carry a firearm as long as it's visible on your side and walk around the street. Why should it become illegal that I could put this jacket on and cover my firearm, and then all of a sudden I would be in violation of illegal carrying of a firearm? So with that said, this has been a very lengthy debate, and I want to say that even though it looks that it's partisan, it had bipartisan support. I think maybe 8 or 10 Democrats came over and supported the bill for constitutional carry. So the question is, where did it take us? Where are we at now and where we're going? So July 4th, which is Independence Day, is the day that we chose to enact this law. At that point, individuals 18 years of age or older who can legally possess a firearm will have the right to carry a firearm concealed. They still cannot carry on public property. They still can't carry on fairs and festivals. They still can't carry if they're intoxicated. They can't carry for Mardi Gras, but it does allow them in public places to carry a firearm concealed. So you say, hey, where's the debate come from? So let me say this. If you go back and look historically over the last 4 years, every time that we've moved that bill and I was involved with it, I amended the bill to say 21 years in age and older. And I want to say that I am a person who believes it should be 21. But we are a nation of laws, and the jurisprudence around that law across America is changing. We've now seen Tennessee, Minnesota, West Virginia. Those federal courts have said, no, the Constitution is for people 18 years of age and older. So I didn't move to amend that bill. It went on at 18, and we moved that bill at 18. Whether I like it or not, that's not my job. My job is to uphold the laws of this land. So let's go to the training, because I think that's where you hear a lot of talk amongst law enforcement professionals. And myself, I am a firearms instructor. I've taught the concealed handgun class. And you say, well, would you give a handgun to someone who doesn't have any training? And I think that's a poor idea. But you also have to have self-responsibility. We got to understand that just like a car, a weapon obviously is a dangerous instrument, and you should have the responsibilities, and it shouldn't be the government to tell you this, to go get adequate training. So what did we do?
The person should know that.
They should know
Common
that,
sense.
right? You should know that. But let's be honest. Criminals, they don't have training, and we have to give the right for honest citizens, law-abiding citizens, to protect themselves. We create laws that hamper law-abiding citizens, and this is clearly one of those instances. So the issue for training comes up repeatedly over and over and over again. And from a law enforcement standpoint, it makes it a tough vote for me. And I would say this. Law enforcement is probably split on this issue. You have some sheriffs in rural Louisiana who they're constitutional people. But, you know, when that bill came up, I went down and talked. And it was Tim Saunier who said this 2 or 3 years ago, and you can look it in the paper. And Tim Saunier said, when I raised my right hand to uphold the laws and constitution of this state and country, I couldn't pick and choose which ones I wanted to uphold. And so the Second Amendment is defined by the founding fathers of this nation. And it said that right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I supported it then, I support it now, and it's the law of the land. And that's what we're here to do.
You'll probably get about 85% approval in these areas. It's when you get to metro areas and the inner cities that you're going to get the pushback from the mayors and different things. And it's really two dynamics working in Louisiana.
Well, it certainly is. But if you look where the crime is committed at and where good people would want to go enjoy a night with their family in New Orleans, you might want to bring a firearm to protect yourself. So let me say this. We also made some changes a little bit. We tried to, we put in place an immunity clause for people who have a concealed carry permit, for those who want to go get the training, who will still pay the fees, who will still do the background check. We've now added an incentive that if you do that and you get involved in a use of force encounter that is justifiable, then you will get immunity. You will be protected from civil liability. So I think the goal of the governor was to extend that immunity for people who have that permit, to incentivize them to go out and take the class and get the training.
And that's a big incentive when you get immunity. I mean,
well, if
you could look forward in the crystal ball and you're involved in a shooting, that's a big thing.
It is. And let me say this. When I went to the police academy in 1997, everybody thinks they're ready, right? You get a firearm, you're walking around with a firearm, Martin. But it was January 7th, 2001 at 6:07 in the morning when I was forced to use deadly force. It's the last time the Thibodeau Police Department has used deadly force on a human being, right? You're not ready for that. You're not prepared for that. In the civil case that came beyond that, I wasn't prepared for either. So I think some people have this misconception about carrying a firearm. So training is important. Having that immunity and protection is clearly important.
And like you said, as we go to the break, the criminals who have shot before and shot at people, it's a little different for them. They're used to it.
Well, again,
we'll talk about that.
We make laws that hamper good people.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back with our last session with the state rep, and he's given us his time, so we'll be right back. Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. welcome back as we continue our talk with State Representative Bryan Fontenot, District 55, who was very involved in all of the law enforcement session that just took place, the concealed carry. Let's stay on that for a while if we can, because it's very confusing to people. But when you really listen to it, it's not that confusing, and it wasn't so malicious on part of the legislation, because still a lot of places you cannot bring a firearm.
Certainly. So let's start with those people who encounter law enforcement professionals. This became a portion of topic that we needed to discuss. So if you are carrying a firearm today and you have a concealed carry license, it tells you that you must notify law enforcement when you come into contact with them that you have a firearm in your possession. So you was to get stopped on a traffic stop, you would say, "Sir, I have a firearm in my vehicle," right? Mm-hmm. The officer is trained on how to handle things going forward. So as we change the law and we get into being able to carry conceal without a permit, those same rules and regulations will apply. If you have a firearm in your possession and you come into contact with the law enforcement, you will tell them, say, "Sir, I have a firearm in my possession." Mm-hmm. So some of the questions is, where can you carry? Well, you can carry nearly any place that's public, and you can go on private property as long as the landowner hasn't disclosed that they don't want any firearms. So if there is a sign that says no firearms allowed, so let's use for schools, for example, that is a firearms-free zone. You could not carry a firearm on a school property. That is a firearms-free zone. So let's consider
only the law enforcement official can carry.
Certainly, law enforcement in the official capacity, right? You still, if you intoxicated and you have a firearm on you, you can be charged with illegal carrying of a firearm. You can't carry a firearm in places that have an alcohol license. So you can't go in a barroom with a firearm. You can't go to a fair or festival with a firearm. You can't go to a large gathering that's licensed for a parade, such as Mardi Gras or the Fireman's Fair in Thibodeau. All of those places would still remain illegal for you to carry a firearm and possess it, whether it was open carry or concealed carry. So those places remain still. And look, the best advice I can give you is, honest people don't hurt people with guns. So if you have a firearm and you're exercising your constitutional rights and you come in contact with a law enforcement professional, you should immediately notify them that you have a firearm in your possession. I can assure you that we have very well-trained law enforcement officers here, and they will be able to handle that situation with very ease on how to communicate with you, obtain the firearm, and make sure that that encounter is as peaceful as possible.
What happens if you have someone that just used to carrying, they walk into Copeland's to get a steak one night, and somebody sees they have a concealed weapon? What's the penalties for something like that?
Well, so I think if Copeland's doesn't have it posted that they don't want firearms on their premises.
We're not saying they do or don't. We're just using them as
we're just using that as an example. Let's just say a restaurant. There's no signs. You carry, lawfully carry, and someone says, "Oh, that patron has a firearm." I think law enforcement officers will get there. They'll investigate, and they'll determine that you legally possess that firearm. If you were in a place that said, "Hey, we didn't want firearms," and it was properly posted, you'd be charged with illegal carrying of a firearm, for which I think is a misdemeanor crime in state law.
Okay. So misdemeanor, even a parade would be a misdemeanor?
A parade would be a misdemeanor as well. That's correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure we get that. With 3 minutes left, another session coming up.
Yeah.
You tired yet?
I am tired. Look, I came in with these high expectations and just ambitious about how do we fix Louisiana. And some of the things that my party would want, we couldn't get there. Now we're getting there in an expedient manner now. So I would say this: we look back now in 4 or 8 years from now, and we haven't improved public school education. We haven't lowered your taxes. We haven't done some of the important things. We only have ourselves to blame now. So the pressure is really on Republicans on how do we change the face of Louisiana. And when you talk to Governor Landry, he reminds you that the bar is not high. We still remain nearly dead last in public school education. I don't think that Governor Landry thinks going to 48th or 47th is success.
Right.
I think Jeff wants to see us in the middle of the pack. I think that's a reasonable place for us to look to obtain. We got to have honest conversations, Morton, right? This is not a school teacher issue, right? We have tied the hands of educators across this state, and we tell school teachers today that we're going to base your performance on the performance of your students. So for you to get a pay raise, I have to look at what your students do. Well, Martin, still today, even as a legislator, if we got a house fire in Thibodeau tonight, I'm going to be out there with my fire department. And I see children in the 3rd and 4th grade at 2 o'clock in the morning, their school uniforms on streets. That's difficult to tell a teacher she's got to manage this, right? So we got to untie the hands of educators. We got to let them do the job they want to do. And we got to push families to be back being traditional families and raising their children and holding parents accountable. When we do those things, we will come out of last place.
Because if you don't manage the children and get them off the street at 2 and 3, you won't be able to manage the teachers. There won't be any. They're going to have a tough time.
Look, we have a significant shortage. We continue to give pay raises, I think around 4,000 or 5,000 in the last 4 years to school teachers, and they still have a shortage, right? Teachers want to be educators, and you know this, Martin. They're more than educators; they're mentors. Right. We want them to love being in the classroom.
They're psychiatrists, they priests, they're everything.
They do a lot for us, right? So I think going forward in the next session, you'll see some education bills. I think you're going to see some ESA bills, education savings accountant, some things that you'll hear as money follows the child. And so that's going to be a topic. I think you'll see here that Representative Hamady will lead the charge on a lot of those issues. As the vice chair of education, she's going to be involved in those issues. You know? All
right. Well, State Representative Fontenot, thank you for the 3 segments. We know you're busy. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
And we'll leave you with a shot. Let's put Carl Johnson up there. We'll leave you with a shot that they just had there. And thanks for giving him a thumbs up. And he's one of Thibodeau's natives. So
yeah, what a great guy.
All right, thank you. We'll be back. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality. All right, we're back. And of course, we had all about the crime bill and everything with our state representative, Bryan, Fontenot, District 55. But I want to talk refereeing. Now, just a little fun segment. And how long have you been refereeing now?
I think this is going to be my 25th year on high school football.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the only place I really let people chew me out and fuss me, and I don't really talk back.
Let's bring up a picture that you recently were in. And let's show you this. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, so, you know, as we were in Black History Month, and we often look deep into the history books to find those African Americans that give great contributions to make America what it is. So I look back to a guy who's a mentor for me and Mr. Carl Johnson and asked him to come up, and obviously I asked the governor to recognize Carl. For many people who don't know, Carl was the first African American to be the executive vice president to officiating for the National Football League, and has clearly broken some glass ceilings in the NFL. He served on the only African American all officiating crew. In one of the Super Bowls, he's officiated 3 Super Bowls. In one of those Super Bowls, the majority of the crew was African American. That was the first time in our history. So look, what Carl has done, not just for African Americans for officiating, but officials really across this country. I could tell you as a young football official, Carl clearly was a role model. He was a guy that I aspired to be like. It was my dream to call college football. And I traveled all across America to make that dream come true, Martin. I went to Reno, Nevada. I went to Texas. I went to Houston. I went out west to California. And when people would ask, hey, sir, where are you from? And I would say Thibodeau, Louisiana. All across America, they would bring up Carl Johnson's name. Like, he's the #1 football official in America, and he's right here home with us.
And I had him on our one-on-one program before, which, by the way, you need to be on. And you're right. He's just a fine gentleman.
Carl is but beside a great football official, a role model to so many, a leader in the African American community. He's a man of dignity, integrity, Christian values. He's a family man. He's just a good guy to have.
But you know, he'd rather be on that field than in that front office. He's told you that.
Yeah. So look, he does a great job. So often on Sundays, we obviously in that picture there's another NFL official from Thibodeau and Jason Leday. So as an official on Sundays or Saturdays when I'm watching the games, I find myself looking for Carl or Jason or either other guys that I know that officiate in the higher ranks of football. So it was a blessing to have Carl there. I could tell you that he was extremely appreciative. The governor was glad to meet him. It was kind of unique because Carl's son was there with us. And a couple years ago, Carl's son, who at the time was a car salesman in Lafayette, had sold the governor's wife a car. So they had a connection there. Wow. It was unique to watch them interact. But Carl's really done a lot for this community, and he will continue to do so. I said this on the House floor, that in modern day history, there's only one football official to ever be enshrined in the National Football's Hall of Fame, and the guy's name is Art McNally. And if you read about him, he was a football official, a baseball umpire. I think he may have called 3 major sports. Look, it's my opinion today, if you look at what Carl Johnson has done for the league, officiating African Americans, I think Carl Johnson's name, when he hangs up his cleats, will be one of those names put up in Canton, Ohio.
Wouldn't that be exciting? And today, I don't think the leagues would allow you to do multiple sports because it's so demanding and there's so many games. So McNally was probably just a rare breed. Today, with the schedules and all that, it's hard to keep up with one.
You know, just up until probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago, being an NFL football official was a part-time job. Carl was the first ever full-time NFL official. And my appreciation today is that on Mondays or Tuesdays when a coach has a concern with a play, Carl gets on a plane and fly across America and meet with NFL coaches and gives the explanation to the ruling and why calls were made. So I definitely don't think there's time for more than one sport for Carl. And he's reached the top of his career in the NFL, and he's continued to go strong. And a great guy to have here in our community.
They fly him there? He can't use Skype?
Yeah, no, I doubt that. I'm sure he goes one-on-one.
It's a one-on-one deal, isn't it?
I would have believed it would be.
Well, but you're right. He just the way he handles himself, just a role model for everybody. What was your major reason for getting into referee? You just had this passion?
You know, when I was a police officer, they had another guy that was officiating, and he asked me to go in, and so I just enjoyed doing it. Now, 25 years in, I've called 4 state championship games. I've never white-hatted the state championship game. I think that'd probably be the pinnacle for me in high school football, to get an opportunity to white-hat a game. But look, I can tell you this: when we talk about Carl, we're extremely shorthanded in football officials across the nation, but Louisiana too. But even on Friday nights when we shorthanded, Carl Johnson will come on my crew on a Friday night. Might be a Covenant Christian or a Houma Christian or an Edie White game, a Thibodeau High game. And the guy who's the #1 football official in America is on the sideline with 16, 17-year-old children to ensure that they have a quality game officiated. So he's still doing his part locally, even though he's a National Football League guy.
That says a lot right there.
It says all what you want to know about his character.
I've seen you out there in the field, and you keep that demeanor pretty good. You don't let those screaming coaches get to you.
I can tell you, I said this at the Capitol. I remember, Coach calls timeout, and he wants to object to the play, and I go speak to him, and he's complaining about Carl Johnson. I said, sir, I don't know if you know this. That's Carl Johnson. He's the #1 official in America. He's probably got the call right. So it's
so
tough.
Pull it in, Coach. Pull it in.
Yeah, it's good. Good to be around and good doing it on Friday nights. It's something I look forward to every year.
Ron, I'm glad we got to talk a little shop away from politics. Good seeing you again, and good luck, and keep moving Louisiana forward.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Bryan Fontenot, State Rep, District 55, talking a little football and refereeing. We'll be back with more.